It's time for the wedding of the century. Centuries. Because they live so long. Katie and I are dressed today to attend a wedding that we will be discussing.
The drama.
It's very exciting.
I'm very excited to start this book.
Me too.
I didn't want to stop reading.
I know. But then I was like, I have to read Kingdom of Ash. So what do I do here? And I like to take notes while I read, but there are times where I was just like, I just want to read.
I know what you mean.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
So on that note, welcome to It's Fate. I'm Morgan Barker.
I'm Katie Christiansen.
And today we are covering A Court of Mist and Fury, chapters 1 through 7.
The meaty. It's meaty.
It is very meaty. Yeah. It's like
lots of things
right at the beginning. Just like with the last book, but this book's more exciting.
Yeah.
But it just feels dense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. How you doing? You ready?
I'm ready to get into this.
Me too. Yay. New season. New time.
So we start with a little epilogue in chapter 1. Right away, we see that Feyre is not doing good. Especially compared to the, like, how she was doing when she got under the mountain, right? She was, like, so happy to be home. But we get into it, and Feyre is dreaming about what happened under the mountain and reflecting on what she did within her dreams. But instead of stabbing Tamlin, she stabs herself with a knife. She wakes up. She's vomiting in the bathroom. Tamlin does not wake up or come to comfort her. And Feyre is kind of like, well, I think sometimes he hears me, but I don't know.
She was totally fine with it. And I'm over here like, girl.
I know.
If I even have a little tickle in my throat in the night, my husband better be waking up and comforting me. Like, I would be pissed.
Yeah. I understand this about Feyre. I'm not very good at speaking about my needs. Gotta work through it in therapy. But you know what? I'm doing much better.
Good. I'm proud
but
of you.
I definitely am like, yeah, I would be like Feyre. I'd be like, we're just gonna pretend.
So to be fair, I have not experienced something like this, but I know that when I'm actually ill, like I will try to be a little bit louder to make sure that my husband is like, oh my gosh,
that's good.
Honey, are you okay? Do you need anything? But he normally is just like, what's going on over there?
He's like, quiet.
Yeah, he's like, I'm trying to sleep. But I haven't had an experience like this where I imagine maybe there's a little bit of shame she's feeling as well.
Yeah. So she essentially has this like mini panic attack, and she needs to remind herself that she's not under the mountain and that what she's experiencing is real. This is real life. And we find out that's been 3 months since Under the Mountain, and we get a little recap of how things have been going. So over the past few months, she's been adjusting to her new Fae body and her new Fae strength. I was thinking about how later I feel like as a fandom, we definitely get annoyed with Elaine and Nesta for hating their Fae bodies.
Guilty.
Same. I'm like, oh my God, come on.
Yeah.
But I feel like we would get less annoyed if we would have gotten like a little bit about how Feyre is adjusting to her body.
Yeah. And actually reading it back, I feel like I was thinking, oh man, that must be hard.
Yeah.
But the main focus was more on her mental health due to what just happened to her. And don't get me wrong, I recognize that Nesta and Elaine, this is kind of a spoiler alert, they go through a sort of trauma that leads to this. But I definitely put a timeline on their grief.
Yeah.
It's time. Move on.
You're like, come on.
Which is not okay,
No.
but you know, it's fake. It's not real life.
She hasn't heard from Rhys at all this time. And she still hates the tattoo. She kind of realizes that Rhys isn't like her enemy, but he's not her friend at this point.
Yeah, it's mysterious.
She questions whether or not Tamlin wakes up, like I mentioned. She's never asked him about it. He also wakes up too.
Yeah. Yeah. And he pretends to stay asleep. And here we go again with them just like not actually talking about their problems, and she doesn't address it either. Like she doesn't tell him that, hey, I know you're up, and then you reappear in our bedroom in your beast form. Like, what's going on? and he also doesn't ask her. So I know that's like a symbiotic relationship here where they're both really not treating each other as an ideal partner would.
Yeah. What do you think Tamlin's nightmares consist of?
I imagine it's losing Farah, just based off of what happens in the future, that he maybe is reliving watching her go through what she did, although he didn't do anything the first time. So it could be guilt too. Like he could be reliving that lack of action and the repercussions of that.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder if he also has some nightmares about like his family.
Ooh.
Like childhood trauma that has happened to him as well.
Yeah, and we don't know if he has had nightmares previously, if this isn't new for him.
No, he never talks.
He does not. He's a silent folk.
Feyre, she says that she's broken and it will take eternity to fix her, which is so sad.
I know. And
it's really sad.
And now she has it too. Like she has so much longer to deal with the repercussions of her decisions. So, well, in chapter 2, Tamlin will basically not let Feyre do anything because it's too dangerous. And I understand why he feels this way to a certain extent. Like I understand the feeling behind it, but what I cannot get on board on is the actions he chooses to take because of those feelings, if that makes sense.
I love that the first interaction we get in this book is them fighting.
I know.
It just sets up their whole relationship.
It starts with them both dealing with night terrors and neither of them checking on one another to fighting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Such a contrast.
So healthy.
To where we left them.
I know.
Yeah. Feyre also mentions that she hides her tattooed hand and then shifts her feet like further apart when she's talking to him. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, is she getting a little like fight stance?
She's ready to throw down.
Yeah. And she knows the tattoo would make him mad. So she knows to hide it. But she's also like, okay, I need to brace myself because I'm like gonna fight, not like physically, but a little bit.
Or is she bracing herself for what's gonna
for the tantrum
towards her? I don't know.
Tamlin loves his tantrums.
He does. Tantrumy Tamlin. They are engaged. Tamlin proposed 2 months ago. Yeah, and that's where we are.
I did a little mini deep dive on what emerald means.
We're wearing emerald.
We are wearing emerald.
Oh my gosh.
So Feyre's ring is emerald. And emerald typically represents vitality, new beginnings, and the spring season.
There you go.
Which is so fitting. It can also represent a faithful relationship and a strong natural connection to a partner.
Okay.
Which I do think that Feyre and Tamlin have this strong natural
chemistry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Attraction to each other. I find it interesting though that he picked out a ring that like represented him.
I know. Well, I do see the new beginnings because they just went through this really big thing and now there's this new beginning. But yeah, the spring season, he's very faithful, sometimes to a fault. I would say she's also really faithful though.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, to a fault.
Yes.
They're actually pretty similar in how they deal with their issues, which is why it's a problem because nobody's handling things healthily. Feyre tells us that there's no mating bond yet, in quotes, and that maybe it will, quote, snap into place, unquote, which just feels like maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. We find out that they celebrated winter solstice, which is also Feyre's birthday, but she didn't tell anyone, which I thought was interesting and just more proof that she and Tamlin barely know each other. I feel like when you are even just dating somebody or have a friendship with somebody, that is one of the first things you choose to learn because it's an important event for that person. Even if they don't like to celebrate birthdays, you're just like, when's your birthday?
Yeah.
You know?
How old are you?
What's your favorite color? And then, what's your deepest, darkest fear?
That sounds perfect.
Great. And they don't know any of those things about each other.
No.
So, really interesting.
I love that Feyre's birthday is on the longest night of the year.
We've been saying it. She loves night.
She does.
Farah says her uniform, so something that she has to wear regularly, is fluffy, colorful gowns, which she hates but has to wear because pants and tunics would send the wrong message. So a couple things here. The first thing is interesting to me is that when she first arrived at the manor, she was like, heck no, you are not putting me in something that I am not comfortable in. I will wear a dress when I choose to wear a dress. And now she's being much more passive about it. And also this idea of sending the wrong message comes up a lot in this chapter. And it made me think of the masks of the spring court and how obviously they're not wearing the masks anymore, the physical masks, but they are very much concerned with appearances and want to keep up this mask or this facade as to what they want people to how they want people to see their lives.
I love that comparison.
And I wouldn't put it past Sarah to have done that purposefully.
It's a masquerade, right? For
literally.
Farah, which is really interesting because the last time the people of the spring court saw her, she was their savior. They saw her like covered in worm poop, right? Doing all of these horrendous things.
Yeah.
But they're trying to make her look so innocent.
Well, yeah, and it goes back to like the traditional roots of the court. A woman is a wife and she dresses pretty, she doesn't fight battles, and she stands by her husband's side and does whatever he says. And even Tamlin, I feel like, puts on a mask as well and like tries to hold it all together, is not allowed to show emotion and just has to like get through things and do these different traditions because that's what they think needs to be done. So it's not just for women here. I feel like all the characters, Lucian even, they are all just conforming to fit what they think the people want. So they're still wearing a mask. We meet the high priestess named Ianthe. We never looked it up, but that's how I say it.
I say Ianthe too.
Okay. Who is Tamlin's friend and is helping with wedding planning.
Farah says she's in no position to doubt Ianthe. Super red flag.
Yeah.
Super red flag. I'm like, why do you think that?
I think it's the power thing. But you should always be able to question somebody.
Yeah, especially someone you just meet. Like, I know she's friends with your fiance, but that doesn't mean you don't question anything.
Yeah, I agree.
And she's definitely like taking advantage of that.
Oh, yeah. She's a little sketch. We learn a little bit about Ianthe and the other high priestesses. So Lucian says that they get their power from their ceremonies that they put on events like Winter Solstice.
I noticed, though, during Winter Solstice, she didn't show any power.
I know. Farah said that she watched her and she positioned herself to, like, take on the sun or something, but nothing happened.
Do we think she actually has powers?
I don't know, and I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
If anything ever happens with her in that regard.
I'm going to assume that she probably doesn't.
Same. Yeah.
It's probably why she's so insecure and controlling.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We also learned that there are 12 total high priestesses in Prythian. There's also just regular priestesses as well. But they're not like traditional human priestesses or priests. They're able to marry and bear children, and they can kind of just live their lives normally. Ianthe shares that the other high priestesses don't like her, and she doesn't like them. So she's not a girl's girl, which is a little bit of a red flag right there.
I wish we knew why.
Right? There's a reason. If all the girls don't like you, why?
If a group of people don't like you, which it's subjective, I know, but
I know. Someone out there is like, girls don't like me and I'm a girl's girl.
But like there's a difference between like, oh, I had a falling out with my friend and like now I don't talk to like her and her friends. Yeah. And a difference between like these are people that like I grew up with and we like did things.
And I'm the outcast. Unless they're all a group of bullies, which I know that's a possible situation as well. This just feels a little bit like,
Especially when later on in the series we meet the other priestesses and just how like nice they usually are.
We don't meet any high priestesses though, do we?
I don't think so. Is the lady that works this is not really a spoiler. You go in the library.
Yeah. I think
she might be.
I don't know. If she is, she's the only one. But we meet other priestesses and they are just
lovely,
so genuine and pure and I think what a priestess and a high priestess should be representing.
Yes.
We find out that Ianthe's family fled during Amarantha's reign, and Lucian is likely he likely hates her for running away from the battle in the war. It wasn't really a war, the conflict. There's the word. What are your thoughts on this? On hating somebody's family for fleeing?
It's really complicated.
I know.
I totally get where Lucian is coming from because he suffered so much.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like she was trying to protect her. Like everyone else wanted to get out too, right?
Yeah.
It's not like
when it was her dad, he chose to protect his family. And I feel like this came up again later in the book. I can't remember. But I think in this case, it's a little different than real life because there's powers involved. So it's like any sort of power may have helped. But in real life, we never chastise, refugees and families from trying to flee when something's unsafe. So I just thought that was interesting.
I think it really shows how much pain Lucian was in. He really wanted to get out, but how is he supposed to do that?
Yeah.
There's no escaping.
Yeah, he didn't get the chance. So maybe it's a little bit
jealousy.
Resentment. Yeah. Feyre sees Ianthe as a friend, as we talked about later.
Feyre mentions that Ianthe has like her eyes on Lucian and she's always like cornering him.
Maybe that's why he hates her.
Yeah. It's
not
gross.
Because she ran away from Amarantha.
Yeah. Ew.
She can't take no for an answer. We get some more lovemaking. Tamlin and Feyre make some love.
Okay. He's described as claiming and branding her. Like during their whole scene, that was like some adjectives that were used. And I was like, okay, I get sometimes that can be hot, but also
it feels like it's very purposeful.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
Like a little too dominating. Yeah. But we did get no claws. No mention of claws.
Hallelujah.
Praise the Lord.
Cauldron.
The cauldron.
Okay, so at the very end of this chapter, we see that he like is kneeling before her. And we don't get much detail, but it's like punctuated by their conversation about being a high lady.
Yeah.
And later on in this book, we get another scene very similar. And I would love to compare like these two scenes when we get to it.
Okay. We got to remember to do that.
Okay. Because I think it's very telling that he's like, shut up. Like, let me just let me make you feel good.
Yeah.
Where like, you're not going to be a high lady. Like,
yeah.
Which she's relieved about it, but there's also part of her like, wait, what?
Why was that decision just taken from me? Which there's a part of me that's like, okay, maybe there's not a high lady situation here, but the way it's approached. So basically they start talking about Feyre's future title and she's like, am I just going to be Tamlin's? No, she says, am I Tamlin's wife? Am I High Lady of the Spring Court? And we find out there's no such thing as a High Lady, only a High Lord's wife. And Feyre kind of begins to question this again, which it just feels the way the conversation was approached was just like, oh, silly girl. There's no High Lady, And then they just have sex again to avoid any sort of discussion.
Yeah.
Band-Aid.
It won't last, that Band-Aid.
No, it's going to rip with those claws.
Okay, so in the next chapter, Feyre has been given permission to go to the village with Lucian. Finally, she's allowed to escape.
Yay.
We learn that the stables is one of the few places that she feels comfortable in after being under the mountain, and that her body physically reacts to being in a space that she feels too enclosed in. Which I totally get.
That's so sad.
So sad.
Yeah.
Lucian tells Feyre that Tamlin is under a lot of pressure and that there are standards and traditions that High Lord's wife must live up to, and he just continues to make excuses for why Tamlin is keeping Feyre under such close supervision and like close guard. And I feel like a lot of this could be solved if Tamlin clued Feyre into the type of pressures he's under. I just feel like after being under that curse and not being able to tell the supposed love of your life information, that you'd be more willing to come forth and be like, hey, these are the certain things I'm having to deal with and face.
Right.
This is why I don't want you to leave.
It's like if they communicated or something with words. It's crazy.
We learn about the tithe. So this is where everyone in the Supreme Court has to pay an annual fee or be hunted down by Tamlin.
Okay. So 2 questions.
Okay.
What do you think about the tithe in general? And what do you think about the grace period? So Farrah says that Tamlin delayed it for a month, which makes it still only 3 months after Amarantha, and everyone's still rebuilding. So what do you think about both of those?
Insane.
I know.
It's insane. Way too close, especially after hearing how like the Supreme Court seems more rural. It doesn't seem like they have a huge city or anything like that. So these are people who are probably living in poverty, living not as lavishly.
When a lot of them come to pay their tithe with their livestock or their eggs or different resources they have, not so much with physical gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like what was Tamlin thinking?
I don't know. I mean, you would think it would be just no tithe this year. Like you have a whole year to rebuild. I feel like that should be automatic.
It was like a passing line.
What?
Okay. Ianthe was the one who wanted the money. Because it says the high priestesses themselves, Ianthe, grant him sacred hunting rights for the tithe. And I feel like the high priestesses have a lot of power over the Supreme Court, especially compared to the other courts.
Well, she's the only one. Okay, from what my understanding is, there's 12 divided amongst the 7 different courts, but she's the only one over the Supreme Court.
Oh, I see.
I think
you're right.
So, yeah, she has all the power in the Supreme Court.
Yeah. So I feel like you get this little snippet of information about Ianthe.
The hunting people down?
Yes,
really?
That's disgusting. I'm like, how are you any better than Amarantha?
No, it's so rough. And as we talk about this more and more, I feel like the Supreme Court is so much like way back when. I have no era. I have no date to give you. But you know what I mean? Like even a king and his wife, like the queen doesn't have any ruling power, like way back whenever.
Yeah.
It's a very traditional old-fashioned court system. I mean, I've seen in movies people come to pay a tithe with or even in the show Outlander, they have to do something like that too, I believe. Maybe I'm mixing up my historical thingamabobs. You know what I mean?
Eras.
Yeah. Where like these are things that happened in real life, but it feels like the rest of Prithian is beyond this, and the Supreme Court's not. They're stuck.
Yeah, they are stuck. I think it's your turn.
No, it's you. We're on chapter 3. Your odds, I'm evens.
I'm so bad at remembering. Okay.
It's hard because we both talk.
Lucian reminds Sarah that although she's alive, they all heard her her neck break, her spine break.
Yeah.
And saw her die, and that's why Tamlin is acting this way. I noticed that anytime you learn anything like significant or deep about Tamlin, it's through Lucian.
True.
Like honestly, I feel like they're a little trio. But Lucian gets none of the physical benefits.
He just does the communicating.
He's like a little mediator. Then they just like run off together and physically connect. And then they're like, wait, Lucian, what's my partner's problem?
Yeah. What's Farrah thinking? What's Tamlin dealing with?
It's ridiculous. And I feel like they're also asking Farrah to do a lot of the emotional work. She has to be the one to bend and do whatever they ask, but they don't listen to her needs. They're not even asking her what she needs at this time.
They heard her neck break, but she's the one who had the broken neck. Like she died. She did all that for them.
She is a new body.
Right. You would think it would be a sit down, hey, this is what I like. Like it feels like common sense, but obviously we are on the outside looking in. So.
Yeah. At the village, the Fae call her Feyre Cursebreaker.
Ooh.
And again, they have a village. Not a bustling city. A village.
Yeah, just a village.
It's small.
There's probably more than one village.
Yeah.
Because the Spring Court's pretty big. But you're right. I think it's just a more rural area.
They turn her away from helping, and everyone's like, the debt is paid. which I know Farrah hates. I'm like,
Yeah.
let her do something, please,
I know.
people. Lucian brought her specifically to show her that she can't help and that she's already helped. And it's just a reminder of all the hell that people went through is to see her. And we later learn that the lesser fae and those deemed unworthy were kept in camps under the mountain. They were crammed into chambers with no light and air for 50 years.
That's so sad.
Awful.
Yeah. So they don't want to be reminded of anything from under the mountain, for sure.
Yeah.
In chapter 4, it's the night before the big wedding, which is why Katie and I are dressed in, for those of you watching on YouTube, we are dressed in our wedding attire, wearing emerald for the spring court.
We got, a special invitation.
Yeah, we were invited. We were there. All the guests are gathered at the manor. Farrah says she is glad that she won't be a high lady, / Tamlin's equal. But she also says that some small part of her inside is fighting against that thought. And every time she lets Tamlin tell her no, or she puts on a pretty dress instead of one she wants to wear, she's less and less of that spicy Farrah from before. And it shows how much she was affected, and it just feels like she's like slowly withering away.
I have anxiety, and I totally can connect with Farrah letting other people make decisions for her because it's sometimes so overwhelming.
Yeah.
I have anxiety, and I haven't been
tortured.
You
didn't have to fight a worm.
Yeah, like I couldn't imagine having, like, sometimes those little decisions are so overwhelming.
Yeah.
That I know it's just Farrah trying to protect herself. But
right. Well, and I know she regrets, not that she regrets having freed everyone and being able to be with Tamlin, but she regrets having to make that choice to kill those fairies. And I feel like she may not even trust her own decision making. Just sad. She finds comfort in Ianthe's presence. She meets a bunch of Tamlin's friends. This is like the rehearsal dinner type thing. But she doesn't even bother to remember their names. Like, she's just so apathetic about how she's living her life.
Yeah, which I feel like is so unlike Farrah. Yeah. She's so kind and loving.
I agree. She leaves the party early, and on her way out, she sees that Tamlin and Lucian seem to be genuinely having a good time. And she realizes she can't remember the last time she laughed. And there are just so many signs in these first few chapters that Farrah is not herself and is dealing with depression. Do you think Tamlin doesn't notice, or does, but he isn't willing to recognize it?
I don't think he notices. I don't think they even know what depression is, especially not Tamlin.
Right. And I think whether it's that he doesn't notice or he does but isn't willing to recognize it, they're both awful. Like, whether you know what it is, you should recognize that your partner is not who they are, that they're struggling with something. So very sad. Farrah has another Amarantha nightmare before the wedding, and she wakes up thinking that once she's married today, everything will just be fine and everyone in the spring court will be able to heal. And that's kind of what the message has been said to her. Like, once you get married, everyone's healing and moving on, so it's fine.
I noticed that when she woke up, she said that the dark sky beckoned her and it soothed her.
I love that you noticed all those little things.
I just like the little details.
That's great. She hates her wedding dress. It's floofy.
Okay, she showed Tamlin the wedding dress, right? Before, I'm pretty sure she did.
Yeah,
and he laughed at her.
I know.
Could you imagine?
Forgot to add that. Yeah,
showing your husband this wedding dress and he's like laughs at you.
I cannot. I know. But they're just kind of like, whatever, this is what we have to do.
Yeah.
And the old Farrah totally would have fought against this. The way the dress was described was giving me Enchanted vibes. You know that movie?
Yes.
Where she's like in the cartoon and then she goes to the real world and it's like just, you can barely even see her because it's so fluffy.
Over the top.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to give a little fan art shout out. I love fan art, especially for these books. There's somebody named @bookart by _ Amai, Amai, and she did a beautiful drawing of Farrah in her wedding dress. We'll post it on Instagram or something, but it was really good. I'll have to show you.
I love fan art.
Me too. I want to do more shout outs.
I feel like Ianthe is really trying to make Farrah look like a fool and weak. And
yeah, because these are all, Ianthe did the planning.
Yes.
These are all her choices.
She picked out the dress.
Yeah. Ooh, not a good look. She gets ready to walk down the aisle, and she sees white rose petals with red ones sprinkled in. And when Ianthe asked her, what colors do you want? She said, anything but red. And they're still red there, and she equates this to the drops of blood from the Two-Face she killed. So yeah, do you think this was intentional? Do you think Ianthe purposefully ignored her?
Yes. I think Ianthe picks up on these little triggers for Feyre, and she uses it to control her. Yeah. She knows that what triggers Feyre, so that Feyre can just continue to retreat into herself to give Ianthe more power.
I agree. Feyre essentially has a panic attack as she's walking down the aisle, and she sees everyone as she saw the spectators enter the mountain. She's using a lot of negative self-talk, saying she's unworthy and a murderer and a liar. She stops right before the dais, which is where Ianthe is perched or whatever. And to herself, she says, help me, help me, help me. Which is just heartbreaking. And she's like trying to make eye contact with somebody to help her, and nobody's responding.
I feel like at this point, she has no true friends there. Ianthe is just using her. Lucien knows that she's freaking out, but he does nothing.
Yeah.
He's so up Tamlin's butt.
He literally is.
I'm like, Lucien.
He's obsessed with Tamlin.
He's obsessed.
Yeah.
He cannot figure it out.
Well, and if you think about it, Tamlin is his savior too.
Yes. They're both way too far up his butt.
No. So Tamlin reaches for her, and she takes a step back. Lightning cracks, and Rhysand appears with the iconic, hello, Feyre, darling.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, before we move on to the next chapter, I just thought of something that I think is interesting. At the beginning of the first book, Feyre's life, to anybody on the outside looking in, would be like, that's a trash life. Like, that sucks. You're in poverty. You're the only one taking care of your family. You're starving all the time. And then we look at this life, right? Mm-hmm. Outsider's perspective. You are free. You're a savior. You are about to marry a high lord. You are rich. You have everything you could want. But then looking at Feyre in the first book compared to this book, she was so much more, even though she wasn't happy necessarily, she was more content in her previous life than she was with all the riches and the glory.
She was more herself.
Yeah, it just goes to show that you really don't know what someone's dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you're up.
Chapter 5. Everyone is terrified of Rhys. This reminds me of when the Grinch shows up to the Whoville Christmas party.
Oh no,
yes, the party when they everyone's staring at him. He's like, huh?
Yeah, the huh. The Grinch.
Yes. That is Rhys right now.
Oh my gosh.
Tamlin lets Feyre go with Rhys, and they winnow away to the night court. And Feyre is pissed that Rhys took her. Feyre's back.
I love it. She's already more herself.
Yes. Rhys reveals that he can hear and see things through their bond. And he also says that he does have a court under his mountain.
Yeah, it's different from, yeah.
I think it's really weird that he's supposed to be a good guy, but he just lets this court run wild.
Yeah, he talks about how it's just the worst place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we really learn more about why.
Yeah. We'll keep an eye out for maybe
we do. Who knows?
So Feyre throws her shoe at him and goes inside and hears a female voice talking to him.
Mm-hmm.
Feyre loves her room.
Yeah.
Do you think Rhys got the room all ready for her specifically?
I do. I think he at least chose the room that he'd want her to be in.
I think so too.
Yeah. And it's described as the most immaculate. She basically says it's from a palace, for a king. So if her room is like that, what does his room look like? I want to know.
And I feel like her room is very airy and stuff like that, because he probably can see her nightmares and her being trapped.
Yes, it has a full open window, and the bath, it's on a mountain, and the bath is one of those open where it goes right up to the edge.
I'm so jealous.
Me too. Someday.
So in the room, Feyre finally just fully breaks down.
I know. I thought of how Rhys can see and feel things through the bond, and I thought of him experiencing this and how heartbreaking that would be.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you know someone deeply or not, the way her breaking down was described, if anyone saw someone to that degree, it would be heart-wrenching.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's really sad.
Especially, and there's nothing you can do right now. Like, she doesn't want comfort from him.
Yeah, I think he made the right choice just to let her have her moment.
Yes. Okay. Feyre has the 2 handmaidens come, and it's the same ones from under the mountain to wake her up for breakfast. And I did a little pronunciation corner.
Love this. I'm glad you did.
I had no idea how to say these names. So one of them is named Nuella.
Nuella. Okay.
And the other one is Ceridwen.
Yeah,
with the little rolled R.
Ooh. I think I was just calling her Carrie. I don't even know. I think I just brushed past their names.
I always just like, when you like see a word but like you don't pronounce it in your head.
Yes.
That's it. Okay,
like, there they are.
These names are Irish, and which I feel like Rhys, the way he's described.
What?
I popped my mouth. I feel like the way Rhys is described could be like an Irishman, like a Gerard Butler, like his hair, dark hair, like piercing eyes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I never would have thought that.
Me either.
I think I'm very stereotypical and think that all Irish people have red hair.
Oh.
just because my dad has red hair.
Oh, is he Irish?
A little bit.
I mean,
you're Scottish.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting that they're both.
Is Gerard Butler Irish?
I thought he was.
I don't know. I'm not good with these things.
I'm pretty sure he is because I'm pretty sure he is.
Okay.
Also, I think Rhysand is an Irish name.
That's so interesting because I would have thought, I don't know. I just think, when you have a picture of something in your brain, I'm like, Ireland, green, spring, even though it's not. It's like potatoes.
I know, it's like cold.
And cold. But for some reason, maybe just because of leprechauns, I don't know.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I need to go. I need to branch out.
I've never been, but.
Yeah. But that's really interesting. Now I want to know more.
Feyre feels a tug on the bond and feels it. And follows it to where Rhys is.
So Feyre is wearing what is described as night court fashion, which includes silk shoes, billowy high-waisted pants that cinch at the ankles, and a top that has flowy sleeves that also cinch at the wrists, and her tummy shows a little.
Ooh.
So risque, which is definitely not anything Feyre is used to. It's definitely more modern, but it made me think of Princess Jasmine.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely gave us Princess Jasmine vibes.
We keep stumbling today. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Okay. We have a whole other section, Morgan.
I know. Okay.
Feyre is super pissed about Rhys trying to teach her to read.
Yeah. And then in the next that was my chapter.
Oh, sorry.
I thought you were gonna. Did you already say this?
No. Okay, let me see this.
Okay.
So Rhys tells her more about their bond, and then he tells her that he wants her to learn how to read.
Yes. And in the next chapter, Feyre is super pissed about him teaching her to read.
There's such a stark contrast between how she acts with Rhys and with Tamlin. She's always telling Rhys no.
I know. She's just like, absolutely not. Whereas Tamlin, she's just, okay.
She's like, whatever you want.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, she's so much more passive with Tamlin. She's been letting him keep her contained. Why do you think that she's more passive with Tamlin than Rhys?
I think at this point they have established power, like who has the power in the relationship, and it's not equal, and it's Tamlin's the one that has the power, and they're going, like, they just have like a cycle of Feyre wants to do something, Tamlin tells her no, Feyre just listens.
Yeah. That's true. She learns that she's stronger than a typical high fae, and she might have been given other powers when she was resurrected. At this point, when you were reading the book, did you think that Tamlin and Lucien had noticed it too?
I think they did.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why they're so afraid to let her go.
Yeah, and it was made a point at the very beginning of the book. Feyre had said she'd like broken some doors and stuff like that, which she attributed to just learning how to deal with her strength.
Mm-hmm.
She meets a hot fae female named Morrigan.
Ooh.
Not me. Morrigan. Nickname is Moore. Just as hot as Reese, apparently.
Ooh, favorite.
Gorgeous.
What were your first impressions of Moore?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
Really?
Yeah. I think I wanted to know more about her.
Me too.
Is she going to be an important character? Is she the Lucian to Reese kind of situation? Yeah.
Yeah. She's very mysterious at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I do like how I remember being like, oh, she's very unconventional.
Yes.
You know, especially compared to like the Supreme Court where they're so like strict on like what to do and what to wear and what to say.
And we really don't see any other female in the Supreme Court other than Ianthe. And Ianthe is Tamlin's equal to a sense because of her role. She rules from the altar, he rules from the throne. I don't know. And so we've never seen like other women talk to Tamlin.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
this is interesting.
Well, Reese is walking away. He flips her off. And I feel like
Reese flipped Farah off
Reese
or more?
Flips. Oh, no. Sorry. More off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And this is like the start of like the filthy gesture.
I know there's always like a vulgar gesture or a filthy gesture. It's so funny. Farah and Reese get started on her lessons. The first thing she reads is, "You look absolutely delicious today, Farah." He gets inside her head and teaches her how to push him out and shield against him. He talks about like putting her shield up so that other people can't read her mind. He wants her to learn to do this because other fae could have the same power and easily access what she knows. And Farah says that he is the enemy, and Reese pushes back and calls her out for being so passive in the spring court. And she's really frustrated with him, so she's able to put up a wall, and she says she puts up a wall of pure adamant, which I thought was referring to the literal definition of like refusing someone to change your mind, so kind of like refusing someone to let into your mind, which it could be. But I also looked it up, and in classical mythology, adamant is an archaic form of diamond.
Ooh.
And she said like pure black adamant. So I'm wondering if it's kind of both.
Mm-hmm. I really like that.
Yeah,
that's super
that was interesting. Reese then takes her to a room with a map of Prithian on the table, and she notices that the Night Court doesn't have any villages, doesn't have any land markings at all. It's just the mountain, which is different from the other courts. And Reese tells her that Amarantha was just the beginning and that war is coming.
I love that Reese has told her more than she has ever learned about in the Night Court or in the Spring Court.
Spent like 24 hours with her and she already knows way more because she's treated like a human being. It's crazy.
So Farah immediately thinks this means Reese is coming to invade the human lands.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think she automatically assumes that he wants to go to war? He has shown her that he's not this like 100% evil guy, but she's always acting like he is.
I don't know. That's a really good question. I think when it comes to the war and protecting the humans, that is her first thought always. Mm-hmm. And with Amarantha or the Blight, before we knew it was Amarantha, it was like, how do I protect the humans from this? And so then knowing that there could be war, how do I protect the humans from this? But I don't know why she's assuming that Reese is showing her this. Like, why would he show her his plans if they were to be against her? Mm-hmm. It doesn't really make sense, but I don't know.
Reese explains that the king of Hybern, who Amarantha worked under, has been wanting to invade the human lands and have been planning for a century.
Crazy.
And we learned that Reese fought in the First War 500 years ago.
Okay, when I reread, so obviously I knew this, but rereading it, I was like, how old is he? Like, do we never get an age, do we?
I don't think we ever get an age.
I don't think we get an age for anyone except for Farah.
I think you're right.
We just find out that Tamlin is younger than Reese because we know that Tamlin was too young to fight in the war.
Yeah.
That's it.
So Reese is over 500 years old.
Yeah, I just want like a timeline. I want to know what's considered adulthood, all of that. It's wild.
He mentions that several of the courts have young High Lords and high priestesses that are angling for control. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's definitely a little hint for Farah to start seeing Ianthe for who she truly is.
Yeah.
That she's just trying to get power.
Absolutely.
Reese tells Farah all about the possible war for two reasons. He wants to know what side Tamlin will be on, and he needs Feyre's help retrieving something he lost since she has such good tracking and capturing skills. So, like the worm and the cereal.
Mm-hmm.
He tells Feyre she needs to master her powers and that with all the 7 High Lords' powers in her, she could be exactly what they need to win the war. She has the power of High Lady. Yeah. Feyre says Tamlin won't approve, and Rhys challenges that and gives Feyre the option to be submissive and ignore who she really is, or to step up and recognize her worth and that it's her choice.
Yeah. The fact that this is her first response, that Tamlin won't approve, is so sad and a huge red flag to the state of their relationship. Like, I understand needing to check in with your partner on things or discuss certain things, but being who you are or making choices about your being shouldn't be one of those things. Shouldn't be like, oh, I need to check in with Tamlin to make sure I can be happy today. He hasn't granted me permission. Like, that's how it feels, you know? So it's just really, really sad.
I feel like we see this theme in her books about how these very strong women fear their own strength and their own skills because they're scared of how it might affect themselves and the people around them. I'm also thinking, if you've read Throne of Glass, Aelin, right before she like embraces herself.
Yeah,
she's very scared of who she truly is and
absolutely.
all her power.
Yeah, that's a good point.
At the end of her week there, Feyre realizes that all the open space has really helped her sleep without the nightmares and vomiting.
Yeah, I thought this was interesting because I feel like it made it seem like it was talking to open space, literally open space, but I also think it could be the literal. Let me say this again.
Okay.
I wonder if it wasn't just the literal space, but also the space from others and the space from those expectations that were held on her.
Yeah. And she's allowed to go wherever she wants and be whoever she wants.
Yeah.
Rhys explains the vanishing they do is actually something called winnowing, and that only some Fae have the skill. And it's basically how powerful you are, the more farther you're able to winnow from place to place. Feyre then spends her last day like she did every day that week, which is practicing lowering and raising her shields and then copying sentences about how wonderful Rhys is.
I love his sense of humor. It's not like Rhys is the most gorgeous High Lord. Rhys is the funniest High Lord. It's so funny.
I think I follow like the Massiverse or SJM or something on like Reddit. And someone was like, I'm a special education teacher and I teach reading, and they're like, this is not how you learn how to read, which I just thought was so funny. Like,
or write anything like that. That's what I'm going to start doing now. That's what we should do to our students.
Morgan is the most beautiful speech pathologist you will ever.
Yeah.
You're like, say this with me.
Your sounds have to be in that sentence somewhere.
So it's time for her to return to the Spring Court, and Rhys says that she'll probably brush the whole wedding situation under the rug like she does with everything.
Ooh, she's called out.
I know. And I love that, like, they do just brush under the rug.
That's literally what happens.
Feyre gets back and she realizes Tamlin trashed his study and half the house based on all of the like claw marks and the new furniture that's in there.
I think maybe he needs to take up running or like some sort of other activity.
He's the guy that punches holes in drywalls.
Yeah. Maybe just take up like boxing.
Maybe find yourself a therapist.
That too.
I don't think they have therapists there.
Yeah, probably not. Maybe just like talk to your partner. Get a hobby.
Yeah. Feyre wants to have a loving reunion with him, but Tamlin just wants to interrogate her about the Night Court.
This was interesting because under the mountain, he went straight for the physical, never checked on her. And here he immediately checks on her and then wants to ask a million questions. I don't know what the shift was there.
I feel like he maybe now sees Feyre as an asset for more information. And she's just an asset to him. She's just to be used as he needs. Yeah. So Feyre starts making excuses for this with not wanting to like be all lovey with her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just saying that's who he is. He's a defender. He's a protector. And it would have been hard for him to like imagine her with an enemy. And I feel like it's always about Tamlin's feelings, right? Feyre doesn't even recognize that she like is not having nightmares anymore and that she's like productive and like well rested and well fed. She's just like, oh, Tamlin, is Tamlin okay? Like he's just a little protector. I'm like,
well, she's making excuses for his behavior, which probably makes her feel better about everything. But I think that's a common character trait of Feyre is that she doesn't advocate for herself. She's always taking care of others and not recognizing that she needs to be taken care of as well.
Yeah. Yeah. She tells Tamlin everything, but mentions that she felt kind of wrong doing it. Her possible powers come up, and Lucien and Tamlin immediately talk about how dangerous it would be for her to like practice them and to let the other High Lords know.
Yeah, I don't understand why basically all the courts are suddenly enemies with one another. We don't really get an explanation for that, but I guess they all hate each other.
I guess they do. Tamlin says that the other High Lords will feel like she has an edge on them that she shouldn't have. She saved them from a horrible, evil dictator.
You would literally be trapped under the mountain or dead if it weren't for her.
Yes. Tamlin, I feel like, consistently sees her as weak when all of her actions have shown how strong Feyre is.
Yeah.
So he doesn't like see her for who she is. It's so frustrating.
It really is.
Tamlin destroys any notion of her training and even said that if they did train, it would take years for her to be ready.
Which is a foreshadow because joke's on you, Tamlin.
Seriously. He says that he'll just protect her if the time ever came. This is so stupid and so prideful.
I know.
What if he's not there?
Also, what if she wants to know how to protect herself? It's dumb.
And then Lucien is pro-training Feyre, but of course gets overridden by Tamlin.
And he doesn't really fight it. So there you go. Okay, well, that is the end of our little recap for chapters 1 through 7. I do have a quick connecting the cosmos. We talked about winnowing. And winnowing is the ability to transport oneself to a different location. And we see it in all 3 books. So in ACOTAR, we saw it in this book. And we learn later that it's not tied to any specific court like other powers are. In Crescent City, there's one character that can do this in the second book. One character that we know of so far. And then in Throne of Glass, in the series, in book 6, Empire of Storms, a character can do this but only very short distances. So it's interesting to see how it's maintained. That power has been maintained, but it's shifted and changed slightly. And it's definitely the strongest in ACOTAR.
Which I think is interesting because I feel like throughout this series, they talk about how like sometimes powers have decreased, right? So I don't think this is really a big spoiler for Crescent City, but like the Autumn King talks about how his like fire and things like that has gotten weaker.
Yeah.
Right? So it's interesting to see how that certain powers evolve and change and like which ones get stronger and which ones become more weak.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It feels like overall ACOTAR is one of the most powerful realms, like where it takes place. Yeah.
And they have like I feel like a very diverse sense of like magic.
And a lot of people have magic, or a lot of fae have magic.
Yeah.
Okay, so next week we will be talking about chapters 8 through 14. So we're now doing weekly recaps. And so, join us. Follow us on the social media. The social media. Oh my gosh. Am I my grandmother? Follow us on MySpace. Add us on AIM. Follow us on TikTok at It's Fate Podcast. We're popping off over there.
We really are. Morgan made this really funny TikTok.
Thank you. I'm really proud. I'm showing everyone at work and they're like, I don't know what this is. And I'm like, but look how many people viewed it. Instagram at It's Fate Pod and YouTube at It's Fate Pod.
Okay, see you next week. Bye.
Bye.